Good morning. Welcome to the Advisory Shutdown Bid Cost Recovery Pre-Market Simulation Training and Scenario Walkthrough. I'm Cynthia Hinman, Lead Customer Readiness Trainer here at the ISO, and with me is Dottie Vance, helping as my producer, and I have a lot of subject matter experts on the phone available to answer your questions should they arise. This presentation is I'm not sure if it's posted yet, but at any time it will be posted on our website along with the recording when it's available. So we have our new ISO website, so I'm very excited about that. To help you navigate, I added this little picture here. If you're going to look for the training, you're going to go to our Stakeholder Center and choose the Training Center. Under there, you will find a box for releases and readiness notes, and the training will be posted there. So with that, let's begin. First, the housekeeping. Of course, we encourage everyone's questions, but if you could remain muted until we get to a moment for questions, you can raise your hand and Dottie will have you unmute, or I will. And you can also ask your questions in the chat and we'll make sure that we address those. There are specific breaks for questions, so you'll see that. All right, hold on just a second. Okay. So today we are going to go through our meeting agenda first. I'm going to give you a summary of the issue and what this initiative is about. Then we'll talk about the settlement and run through an example of that. We'll talk about the changes to CMRI, the Customer Market Results Interface. There's a new report. We'll run through the market simulation scenarios. There are 2 of them, and then we'll do a wrap-up of what all this means to you and what you're going to need to do going forward. All right. So first, we're going to give you some background and an example. So let's get started with that. All right. So Tariff Section 11.17.2.1 covers disqualification based on advisory schedules. This is not a new tariff section. It's existed for quite some time. So there's nothing new here. But what this does is it's looking at those advisory shutdown periods and determining if there's disqualification because a resource is persistently deviating after they got an advisory shutdown instruction. So at the bottom of this slide, you can see that is the actual tariff language. But what it's actually saying is if the dispatch operating point minus the shutdown state variable is less than minimum load, less than or equal to minimum load, then minimum load costs are disqualified from bid cost recovery. So we're going to go through an example. I'm going to tell you what the shutdown state variable is and what that means, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so let's go through an example of a shutdown instruction. Let's say we have a resource that has a 2-hour shutdown time. At 9 o'clock, the FMM market run, the SC receives a shutdown instruction for 12 o'clock, also receives DOTs to gradually reduce output to PMIN. So it's a 2-hour shutdown resource. So at 10 o'clock, the instruction becomes binding for the shutdown at 12. The advisory shutdown period that we're talking about is that time in this example between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. During that period, if a resource persistently deviates in the positive direction, they are not eligible for minimum load cost compensation for any potential bid cost recovery during this period. So if you're getting a shutdown instruction that would imply that you should not be inking your resource. So resources are not eligible for minimum load cost compensation during an advisory shutdown period. It should say resources may not be eligible. So I should update that. But what that means to your schedulers is if you're persistently incrementing your output during an advisory shutdown period, that could make the resource ineligible for minimum load costs during that period. Again, this is nothing new. But what is new is that we are, and this is what is in red on the bottom here, is the ISO is implementing a flag that sends advisory shutdown information to settlements. So that flag did not exist before. Once this is implemented, it will exist. And what that will tell is that during this period, a resource with positive UIE may be ineligible for minimum load cost compensation and could potentially impact the bid cost recovery. Again, we're going to be going through an example of this. So some questions that have come up. Is this a new process? No. It's an existing tariff requirement. The only change is that the advisory period information is getting sent to settlements. We're implementing this flag. What happens if the unit's advisory instruction is dropped or reversed? Well, then this variable flag, the flag will be reset. So the shutdown variable that requalifies minimum load cost for bid cost recovery will be reset. Is this only for the day-ahead market? No, it can be anything, IFM, ROC, or real-time. And the change is not retroactive. We are not going back to when we implemented this tariff section. It will be implemented as of the effective date. So the question is, when is that effective date? Excuse me. So today we're having our training. Market simulation will start on June 25th. And we anticipate going live before 8/1. So I'm going to stop now for questions on just the very basics before we get into the settlements. So if you have questions, you can raise your hand, or we can look in the chat and answer any questions there.
Cindy, at this time, I'm currently not seeing any hands raised, and I'll look over in the chat real quick to see. And I do not see any questions in the chat as well at this time.
Thank you, Dottie. All right, well, we'll move on and you'll have other opportunities for questions. Hold on just a moment. All right, let's move on. So now we're going to get into the settlements portion. We'll give you an introduction. I'm going to tell you about what that shutdown state variable does, and then we'll go into an example. So what's the problem and what's the solution? Well, the problem was that there was a missing input data value for an existing billing determinant, and it's listed right there. And that it prevented the ISO from qualifying minimum load cost, even though the settlement formula was already there. We weren't getting that information. So the solution ensures advisory shutdown instruction data is broadcasted so that the advisory shutdown flag billing determinant can be created. And then use the input and reflect the minimum load cost qualification in settlements. So let's talk about that shutdown state variable. What does the shutdown state variable do? Well, it does a couple of important things. First, it keeps track of the positive uninstructed imbalance energy once there's an advisory shutdown instruction and provides megawatt hour cumulative over the real-time unit commitment intervals when a resource follows their instruction. So hold on just a moment, please. Oh, Okay, the second thing that happens is it begins to accumulate the positive uninstructed imbalance energy. And as soon as that advisory shutdown instruction happens within the real-time market dispatch horizon and continues to accumulate the positive uninstructed imbalance energy as long as the unit is on, and meter energy, less regulation energy, less expected energy is greater than the performance metric tolerance band. The performance metric tolerance band in this calculation is 5 megawatts divided by the number of settlement intervals per settlement period, or 3% of the relevant generating units PMAX registered in the master file, divided by the number of settlement intervals per settlement period. So, and then it gets reset to 0 when most recent real-time unit commitment run no longer has an advisory shutdown instruction within the real-time market dispatch horizon, or when the resource is off. So we've got the shutdown state variable that's keeping track of all the positive uninstructed imbalance energy, and it is also looking at the tolerance band as well. So let's take a look at what we're talking about when we're talking about advisories, advisory intervals. We have here a market run. It has five different market runs, RTUCA through E. And you can see that RTUCA, the first line, is the binding interval of 9 o'clock through 9:15. You can also see that there are 4 advisory intervals, 4 advisories during that market run. And the last one is the 4th advisory is 10 o'clock to 10:15. As we go through each market run, that 10 o'clock through 10:15 advisory gets closer and closer, and then by the 5th run, the RTUCE, it is the binding interval. So we're no longer in the advisory period anymore. It's now a binding instruction. You can also see in this example, this shutdown instruction was maintained throughout all of the intervals, and the ISO didn't change its instruction. The bullet below the chart says it is possible for the ISO to change that instruction, and then of course the flag would be reset. So let's go through one example here. We have a resource. The P min of this resource is 20 megawatts. The minimum load cost for this resource is $300 per 5-minute interval. In this example, in this chart that we have the 5-minute intervals at the top, 5-minute interval 97 through 108. The next row down, the minimum load cost, you can see is $300 for each one of those intervals. The meter, what the resource actually produced, was 30 megawatts. The total expected energy, or also the dispatch operating point, was 25. So the resource was dispatched to 25. The meter showed 30. That is, they were deviating by 5 megawatts. You can see in the UIE line that all the way through there, there is uninstructed imbalance energy of 5 megawatts. And in fact, that is positive uninstructed imbalance energy. So that is in the next line. The green row is the advisory shutdown flag. And you can see for intervals 97 through 105, there's a 1 in there. And that means that an advisory shutdown exists. In intervals 106 through 108, the shutdown flag is 0, meaning that there is no advisory shutdown occurring at that point. So it was reset between 105 and 106 for whatever reason. The next line is showing the positive UIE, and it's accumulating. Remember that variable flag is doing, the variable state is doing that. It's accumulating for each one of the intervals. You can see in interval 97, there was 5 megawatts of positive UIE. In the interval 98, it was increased by 5 more. So UIE cumulative shows 10, and it goes all the way up to 45 in interval 105. After that, because the advisory shutdown flag is 0, we're no longer accumulating that. Now, the TEE minus UIE, that's where we need that for the shutdown state variable. You can see that if you take the TEE, the total expected energy, let's look at column 97. You can see that the TEE is 25 and the UIE is 5. And if we subtract the UIE from the TEE, we come up with 20 megawatts. 20 megawatts is equal to the Pmin. And as we go on through each interval, going forward, 98 through 105, you can see that in each one of these intervals, the cumulative, or the shutdown state variable, if you will, is less than the minimum load. And if you look at the bottom, you can see at the dispatch operating point, this is from the tariff, just copied it here again. If the dispatch operating point minus the shutdown variable is less than or equal to minimum load, then the minimum load costs are disqualified from bid cost recovery. So what we're saying is, when we're looking at the dispatch operating point, at 25 megawatts, we're comparing it to this TEE cumulative. We can see that for this resource, the shutdown state variable is less than or equal to 20 megawatts. And as it states on the bottom, then minimum load costs are disqualified from bid cost recovery. You can see at the bottom row, the yellow, that this resource for intervals 97 through 105 does not receive the minimum load cost compensation. But once that variable is reset, then the resource again is then eligible. And also you can see that their TEE minus UIE cumulative is greater than their Pmin, so they're eligible for that $300 for each 5-minute interval. Okay. The charge codes that could be impacted by this impacts both WEIM entities as well as ISO entities. And you can see the charge codes that would be impacted. Those are all the bid cost recovery settlements and allocations. I see that there is an example. I think we're time for questions, so I'll go back to the example. I can see that Jeffrey has a question, and so in this example, is the advisory flag being put as a 1 because they are still generating, or because they are deviating from their TEE? Now, I know I've got Mel on the line. Mel, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, let's read. So the advisory shutdown flag, okay, you can hear me right. Good morning, everyone. So the green is actually our input to settlement. So if you're referring to that, that is independent of what happens to what the generator is doing. If you're referring to the second to the last row, that's already a combination calculations. Yeah, Cindy mentioned to you how that's are computed. Is your question on that second to the last row or not? Jeffrey.
So is your question, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, sorry. So just to clarify a little more. So the way I understood it before was that CAISO will send the advisory shutdown to tell the unit that they want them to shut down, right? Or to start shutting down. So I guess my confusion is the advisory shutdown flag is set as 1 on the green line. So does that mean that they have already, the previous hour, they had already set the flag or told the generator to shut down, and during these intervals they didn't start shutting down, so they're deviating from the TEE.
Yeah.
Is that why they're not qualified for the min load cost?
Yeah. So what you just described is as a case where the resource, CAISO really wanted them to get ready for being able to be shut down, but they are operating at a level where we cannot shut them down because there's like ramp limitations, right? You cannot just quickly ramp down beyond your actual ramping characteristics. I mean the resource ramping characteristics. So yeah, in that case, they are persistently deviating. What we're simply saying here is, if we can capture how much you have deviated or persistently deviated, then definitely we have this tariff section that tells us, hey, that's not right. We should disqualify you or your MLC for those intervals.
Okay, so if they had, in this example, if they had the meter was 25 and then there was no UIE, then this resource would be qualified for the MLC because it wouldn't.
Yeah, more likely. Okay, now you changed your example. Your example, the UIE, you said even the passive UIE is 0, right? So maybe we need to change this example, right? The UIE probably is the first interval 97 is 5, right? Maybe not 5, but probably 3. I have to do it smaller. And then you're saying in the next interval, they actually didn't deviate. They followed the dispatch of CAISO. Then, yeah, even if we add, accumulate, we don't see any positive UAE for the next interval, then that will be small enough so that even if you compare it with the TE for the later calculations, it will not show up that the resource has persistently deviated to warrant a disqualification.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mel. Stay on the line. I've got a couple other questions set for you. The second question we have in the chat, would it be possible for the ISO to itemize or draft out the calculation through each interval from this example shown here? Would that be possible to put that together and I can post it on the website? Okay, let me take that back. I'll talk to Mel about that. Mel, there is another question from Jennifer Fletcher that says, does the advisory shutdown flag activate during unit configuration transitions, such as moving from a 2x1 to a 1x1 configuration?
I might need help from our marketer. I think this is a case where you're transitioning, right? I don't think that's considered as a shutdown from the resource level. So transitions would be a different topic. It won't be under the domain of this tariff section.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, does that answer your question? Okay. All right, well, okay, it looks like, Jeffrey, you have your hand raised. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
I'm sorry, I left the raise earlier. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Well, so Kevin, I will need to get back to you about providing the draft calculations. And Jennifer, I'm assuming that you got the answer to your question. And if not, just raise your hand and or add additional information in the chat. Are there any other questions? Savi, do you see anything?
Yep, so I'm looking now and I don't see any other hands raised at this time, nor do I see any other questions in the chat, so I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So let's continue on. All right, there is a new report in CMRI, Customer Market Results Interface, and we're going to take a look at that now. There is a UI and an API. I have the API information there on the right. And if you are using the UI and you go to the real-time tab, go to the very bottom, we have that. We're going to have that new report called Real-Time Advisory Shutdown Instructions. It's going to look something like this. As you can see, you will put in the trade date you're looking for and your entity, and then bring that up. And this will show you the advisory shutdown instructions that you've received. So it gives you the trade date, the SCID, the resource ID, the resource type, and the resource instruction will be for RTUC always. And the instruction type for this is going to be, you should always see shutdown there. There are, of course, other instruction types, but for this report, we're looking for those shutdowns. And the binding instruction should be a no, because it's an advisory at that point. And then there's the interval start time and the instruction start time. The interval start time represents the interval when the advisory was first submitted, and the instruction time, start time, will represent the actual time when the instruction would start. So that's what you're going to see in this report. The report is updated every 15 minutes, and this should be available when we go live. Questions about CMRI?
I'm looking right now, Cindy, to see if we have any hands raised. As a reminder, you can use the raised hand feature at the bottom on the WebEx, or you can put your questions in the chat. And so at this time, I don't see any hands raised, nor do I see any questions, so I'll pass it back to you, Cindy.
All right, thank you, Dottie. Now we're going to go through the market simulation scenario walkthrough. This is actually an addition to our normal process that we've been doing up until now. Based on stakeholder request, we are going to walk through the scenarios, and I have many SMEs available to answer your questions. This wasn't advertised in the market notice that went out about for this training, but going forward, we will start adding that in there, because I think it's really important for us to go through those scenarios during that training and be able to answer your questions. So let's see how it goes. The market sim scenarios for this, it's going to be really hard to make the situations happen that would cause the flag to be set or not set. So we are going to be running some tests and scenarios, and we will make that information available to you. That's not to say that you can't try doing it yourself, but in addition, we're also going to be providing you with these scenarios and the findings that we have. So this is the first scenario. The description of it is verify advisory shutdown instructions for generating resources in the new CMRI reports. The point of this is to make sure that the CMRI report is showing the correct information. The ISO during the market sim will run the markets or whatever simulation trade date we choose. And I'm sure if you participate in the market sim forums or you register to participate in the market sim, you will get that information about the trade dates. This impacts all of our market participants, as I mentioned. So participants will submit bids, and of course, if you're an ISO market participant, you can submit day ahead or real-time bids. If you're a WEIM, you could submit your real-time bids. You should, depending on how your bids are optimized, you will receive an advisory shutdown instruction, and that you would see that in the new CMRI report. Also, it should trigger that flag, so you will see the settlement implications of that as well. So what we're asking you to do for this particular one is to make sure that that report, the CMRI report, is providing you with the correct information. Also, you will want to validate the settlements. The second scenario is focusing more on bid cost recovery specifically. And you're going to verify the minimum load cost is assessed for resources with advisory shutdown. So again, the ISO is going to trigger bid cost recovery for generating resources with advisory shutdown, and we're going to put dummy meter data in there. And then you'll be able to look at the settlement statements for the bid cost recovery assessed charge codes and make sure that they are correct. So that is the second scenario for the market sim. As if you are interested in another scenario or something else you think we should be testing, please submit a city ticket and we can set up that scenario for you. So city tickets for new, for any other scenarios that you might have. So again, please register to participate in the market simulation as soon as possible. Actually, I think it's by June 14th. Attend the market simulation forum calls. Those usually happen on Mondays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. And submit your questions and any additional scenarios that you'd like to see via the city application. I see that there are some questions. Chun Yu, good morning. I see your hand is raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, good morning, Cynthia. Thanks for the good training. Can you go back to scenario 2? Yes, on this BCR, looks like CAISO is going to generate a condition. So if we were to validate the settlements, we will need the resource. So do we need to, so look like the market, CAISO market participants action, it's not applied here. I just want to know if without a resource that participate in this exercise, how can we assess the BCR settlements?
That very good question. And I think that and I'm gonna hand it over to Anshuman. Actually, let me just hand it over to Anshuman to answer that question. I believe he is on the call.
Thank you, Cynthia.
And
Hi.
go ahead, Anshuman.
Yes, that's a great question, Chanu. So as you know, generating a BCR scenario for a resource is difficult to process or difficult to create, right? Because it needs to have the right market conditions.
Yes.
So, and it complicates more when you have to do it for a resource which has an advisory shutdown. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to let the market run. We're going to see which resources are getting advisory shutdown, then go ahead and choose those resources for the registered market participants. And then in the back end, we're going to edit it so that it will generate a bid cost recovery scenario. We'll edit the prices in the back end to generate that.
So,
and once we do that, we will get the resources that we have edited and we'll give it to the registered market participants to go ahead and verify those resources in the settlement statements.
Right, that sounds like a good idea. It's possible, looks like the 1 and 2, we can even combine the scenario, right? If you identify a trade date and that we shall participate and then we will bid in with a specific resource and then receive the advisory shutdown. I mean, we can probably do in 2 separate trade days, but I don't know if CAISO able to do in a same trade day, but different hour for the BCR. Just thinking out loud here, definitely needs
that's
minimal.
That's a great point, Shanu. And just to let you know, I mean, it's difficult for us also to pinpoint and say that this resource will get an advisory shutdown. What our thought is that in a general run of a market, we will receive, I'm sorry. We will receive advisory shutdown for the resource as we are going through the normal run of the market. And what we're planning to do is, we could see those resources just for scenario 1, and we could let you know, or you could go to the CMRI report and pull up that any resource with advisory shutdown flag. And that way you would know which resources received that shutdown. We're trying to see if we can maximize the number of advisory shutdowns for the registered market participants.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we're promising to do, right?
Okay. Okay, so I guess we can be in little close coordination when it comes to the time, in order to be able to see all the desired outcome or the outcomes that Cynthia just walked through. Yeah. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Shayu. Tony, go ahead.
Also, along those lines, will then the participants, once they know they have advisory shutdown, are they going to have to make sure their meter submissions reflect that to trigger the calculation of the UIE?
Again, a great point, Tony. So we understand that it's difficult for market participants to know ahead of time which resources are receiving the advisory shutdown. On top of that, knowing which resources will have bit cost recovery. So ISO has made that easy. We are saying that we will generate the BCR scenario for the resources, and we will also submit the dummy meter data for those resources.
Oh, okay.
And hence,
Okay.
the market participant action is, there's no market participant action.
Okay, and then provided maybe some market participants aren't on this training or following, I think Cynthia said the registration date is the 14th. Will there be a notice that goes out just to make sure anybody who wants to participate knows they need to register? Or has that already gone out and I missed it?
That's a great point. And Tony, we can work on that to send out a notice regarding that June 14th date. We have also published the market sim scenario document, so you should be able to review that document, which mentions the June 14th date. So that's a great idea. We'll send out a market notice too.
Okay, thank you.
Additionally, I believe there is a rug call today. Is that right, Anjuman? And it will probably be discussed there.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
it has canceled the rock call.
Oh, it was canceled? That's why I
Yeah.
said I wasn't sure.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Can I
Did
ask
you have another
additional
question?
question? Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank
And
you.
then Gita
I
will
think
get to
Tony
you.
Tony has a good question. So I think from market sim perspective, it sounds like market participants only pre-market settle. I think the only option sounds like we just need to submit bid, register the resource and submit bid. And also, I agree with Inchman, you guys can manipulate the data to have the deviation, have the UIE. And also, then of course, the BCR, it's you have to create certain market condition to have that happen. So it sounds like more, actually, Inchman, I can see the scenarios. We can probably define it a little further to be very clear. And I really look forward the June 20th market sim to have more conversation on this. Thank you.
Definitely. So
All right.
we welcome any suggestions you have on this scenario. And if you have any additional scenarios that you would like to test for this functionality, please let us know. We are more than welcome to adding more scenarios which drives, success of this market simulation for market participants.
All right. I saw Gita had her hand up, but it looks like she put it down. Oh, their hand's back up. Go ahead, Gita, ask your question.
Yes, hi Cynthia. Thank you.
Hello.
So I understand for the market sim, but my question is in production, how does the market participant get notified of the advisory shutdown? I didn't think that advisory comes through ABS. Is that
Right. You're going to see that in CMRI, in that CMRI report.
But CMRI so it's not really in real time, the notification.
Yeah, my understanding is that report will be updated every 15 minutes. Does one of my subject matter experts want to provide more information about that? Okay.
Hi, this is Juan PS3. I don't think I see anybody from CMRI, but I know that the payload that would populate this display in CMRI will come out of market every 15 minutes with a 15-minute market run. So it will show which ones are the advisory shutdowns after market results are published.
So the market participant is supposed to watch and monitor that CMRI report and adjust their meter based on that.
There will also be an instruction. I'll go back here to this example. You're also going to receive a DOT to gradually reduce your output to payment. So
Okay.
you will see that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Juan, for clarifying that when I'm talking on the mute, and sorry about that. I have a double mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Lapsma. I'm skipping back through. Any other questions? Oh, Emmy. Go ahead, Emmy.
Yeah, Emmy Stenset, Midway Sunset. Just to be clear, there will be a shutdown instruction that will show on ADS, that will come up on ADS, or is it just a change in DOT?
Juan, do you want to handle that, or I'm not sure who the correct person is for that one.
That. Yeah.
So, Emmy,
Yeah, if you go ahead, Juan, if you want to speak. Or Uma. go ahead,
Emmy.
Uma.
Yeah. Hi, Amy. Thanks for the question. So you will see the binding shutdown instruction in ADS, like you're seeing it today.
Okay,
This is
thank you.
advisory.
Okay. Oh, so we only see the binding one, but we will not see the advisory. We have to look at CMRI to get the advisory one?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Emmy. There was another question, but it looked like whoever it was put their hand down. Are there any other questions? Please raise your hand or put it in the chat.
So Cindy, I'm looking to see if we have any other hands raised. And the only hand I see is Emmy still up. So Emmy, I'm not sure if you still have a question or if you're, oh, I see that you lowered it. And then in the chat, I also don't see any other questions, so I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Dottie.
Cindy, do we have more time? I wanted to ask Kevin to put more details on what he's asking.
Okay, so
it looks possible for CAISO to itemize or draft out the calculations. Yeah, if you're asking per interval, each of those can be separated, right? Yeah, if you just cover 98 to 108 and you just select a single interval, I think this is already as detailed or as specific as we can show. MLC is an item, right? You cannot further segregate that. Meter is also, T is also an atom, right? Yeah, I don't know what details or draft out you'd like it to see. Because if you just focus on one interval column, each of these are unique calculations. And these are simple calculations.
So maybe I can try to understand myself,
Sure.
first, and then I'll get back to you guys on this.
Okay. You want to understand it more, okay, before you come back. Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mel, and thank you, Kevin. I still am not seeing any additional questions. I'm going to flip through the slides here again, give you a chance if you have questions to raise your hand or put them in the chat.
Yeah, I did see David's hand go up. Oh, so David, you can come off mute and ask your question.
Hey guys,
Hi,
Dave
Dave.
Francis, BP. Just double checking. Is this presentation posted yet?
I sent it off to be posted. It may not be posted yet, but it will be posted
It will be.
today. And
Okay.
yeah,
I'm still lost in the new website.
okay. If you'll go to the Stakeholder Center, go to the Training Center, and there's a box that says Releases, and you'll find it in there.
Releases or recent material?
No, if you go down a little bit, it says Releases, Initiatives, and Release Notes, or something like Readiness Notes, something like that.
Gotcha. Okay, at the bottom. Okay,
All
yeah,
right.
I'll find it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Okay, I'm going to go through my wrap-up. We'll stop one more time for questions after that. So what do you need to do? Well, what you need to do is sign up to participate in the market simulation by June 14th. I can add that to the other slide as well, but it is here. Are there other scenarios you would like to see? Send us a city ticket and we can put together whatever you'd like, if that will help validate this change. When we go into production, those who do scheduling, if a resource is in an advisory shutdown period, know that minimum load costs may not be eligible for bid cost recovery if you are persistently deviating in the positive UIE direction. Settlement staff, if you see minimum load costs are not being considered for bid cost recovery, one place to check now will be to see if that interval was an advisory shutdown period. Again, submit your questions and disputes through city as necessary. So just to reiterate, we're doing this training. There will be a market sim. There will be market sim forum calls as well, and we're anticipating to go live before 8/1. And when we have that date available, we will certainly let you know in the RUG meetings and all of those other meetings that we have. This is just one of our standard slides that's telling you about our functional environments and what you use them for. We talked about the questions for market sim already. If you have questions about a release that it does not have to do with market simulation, please use the functional environment of release for that. I'm all but done with my training. As usual, we would really appreciate it if you can fill out the SurveyMonkey questionnaire. It's just got a few questions about the training and about the trainer. This really helps us in the future, and we're really listening to the feedback that we're getting from our customers and trying to improve the training. So it'd be really, really helpful if you could just take a few minutes and do the survey for this course. With that, I will stop one more time for questions. Chanyu, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yes, hi, Cynthia. If you can post the link for the evaluation for the training, that would be great, because we haven't seen the training presentation have been posted. I've been looking everywhere. So if you can post it on the chat, then we can have it done. Thank you.
Okay, Dottie just did that. Thank you, Dottie, you're the best. So she made that available for you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? There's just a couple of the slides about where to ask questions. I put some reference links in here for the tech stacks, the PRRs, and the tariff section that I referred to at the very beginning. With that, thank you all for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.